අද්විතීය 200 Mbps ස්පීඩ් එකකින් ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ වේගවත්ම සහ පුළුල්තම හෝම් බ්‍රෝඩ්බෑන්ඩ් සම්බන්ධතාවය වන SLT මොබිටෙල් දේශීය ෆයිබර් බලවේගය ඔබත් අදම අත්විඳින්න.
හරිම සුදුයි.
Tonight on First at 9 this Thursday, the 6th of July 2023. Inflation deflating. The central bank governor explains why the government introduced a domestic debt optimization strategy.
What caused for us to change the position or compromise the situation? This is a negotiation process.
Hints a further reduction at the rate of inflation.
It will be 7% end of this month. It will be low single digit going forward.
Growth spurt. Economic experts explain why debt optimization is essential.
Domestic debt optimization is making this debt sustainable. We can't expect the debt sustainability to be achieved only by restructuring the external debt.
Says the investor community praises the debt strategy of the government.
Foreign investors would have appreciated the fact that the banks were not affected by this, because if the banks start lending, have the ability to start lending, the economy can get a kickstart.
Pro anti-corruption. The second reading of the AntiCorruption Bill was passed in Parliament.
Alliance Finance මෙතුරු රන්නයි සේවාවෙන් රන් පවුම්කට රුපියල් 1,70,000ක ඉහළ අධිකාරම.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟම ඇති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
This is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and a warm welcome to today's edition of AdaDerana's English News, First at 9. Let's take a look at our top story for this evening. Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, at a press conference today, addressed the government's need to embark on a domestic debt restructuring plan. Seen as a further step in shoring up credibility for the country with its external creditors, the government continued with this initiative to realize the country's commitment towards sound economic best practices. Further, the governor confirmed that Sri Lanka is committed to building on its foreign reserves in the wake of the monetary policy review today. The Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka has decided to reduce the standing deposit facility rate and the standing lending facility rate of the central bank by 200 basis points to 11% and 12% respectively at the Monetary Board meeting yesterday.
Market risk is already moving into the downward path as a result of more liquidity and more confidence moving into after staff level agreement. Now what we can expect going forward is that the interest rate structure will be back to normal with benchmark rates moving closer to policy rates, and others will move in line with risk premiums attached to each lending and deposit rates. We would hope that will happen soon. That will give more benefits to the economy and more credit to the economy. So we do not hesitate to have some administrative measures and targets to move that path in line with the normal interest rate structure.
Governor, you mentioned about uncertainty, the premium. There was an allegation that it was the central bank that caused that uncertainty by denying the need for DDR originally. How would you respond to that position?
Our position has always been, because of the high inflation, high exchange rate, our domestic debt has already been effectively restructured to a certain extent. So our position at that time, obviously, was that we do not see a need for a further restructuring of the domestic debt, because already that has happened as a result of this thing. Even today, I maintain the same position. We think we don't need, if we can not restructure domestic debt, that would be better, because already restructured. That I agree with that point. But what caused for us to change the position or compromise the situation? This is a negotiation process. For example, once we reach a staff level agreement, obviously all our agreement commitment is to restore sovereign debt sustainability. Then we agree to a certain next 10-year debt targets. Then when we ask our external creditors to make a contribution, and on that basis, based on the debt targets, debt service, external debt, and debt to GDP, and gross financing needs. So we have asked the external creditors to make a significant contribution for us to bring down our debt sustainability from the creditors that they have lent us. When they make that, when we make that request in the negotiation, obviously, The next question coming is that for them to give that relief or concession, they think that what we have done already in terms of one is a fiscal primary surplus 2.3% plus some adjustment in terms of as a result of inflation and exchange rate is not sufficient. They would like to see us some more little contribution compared to what they are going to give us. So this is a process of negotiations. We are also involved in the negotiations with Minister of Finance. We are able to come to the most possible and best deal that one can achieve and come to compromise and come to a situation where we can move forward. Once we have done that part, you can see clearly the benefits of this thing. And also going forward, I can see it's a very positive movement. All markets responded positively. And there are good comments by international agencies, rating and everyone. So that I think I'm sure, confident we can move forward. I think
in 2 consecutive monetary policy meeting, you have reduced the rates. Is the central bank under pressure because of this DDO or IMF?
If you look at the disinflation path, it's the sharpest. When you can see this kind of inflation falling sharply, I don't think anyone can justify the policy rates maintaining. Under normal circumstances, if inflation is 5%, policy rates can be 7.5, 8, 9 level maximum. But still, inflation is 12 last month. It will be 7% end of this month. It will be low single digit going forward. I don't think if any proactive monetary policy and credible monetary policy, we have to be proactive.
Have you all had any responses from the foreign creditors and how will those discussions be taken forward?
We have done our part now. It's up to the creditors and we would like to expedite the process and reach to an agreement with both bilateral and ISP creditors before the first review.
Staying on the topic of domestic debt optimization, financial markets expert Ravi Abesurya says that domestic debt optimization is essential to make Sri Lanka's debt sustainable. Speaking to Indivari Amuwatta during our current affairs program at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24, he said that Sri Lanka cannot achieve its debt targets, including a sustainable gross financial needs and reduction in debt to GDP ratio, by only restructuring its foreign debt. Meanwhile, capital markets expert Deshan Pushparaja says that investors and the international community have praised the government's decision to exclude banks from domestic debt restructuring and added that banks lending at its full capacity at this particular stage is helpful towards economic revival.
What really is this debt treatment plan for us here when we talk about domestic debt?
What the domestic debt restructuring, which has been termed as voluntary domestic debt optimization, is making this debt sustainable. We can't expect the debt sustainability to be achieved only by doing the haircut or restructuring the external debt. When the government and the central bank look at how to go about domestic debt restructuring, they have to adopt the least impactful methodology to make sure the economy starts growing. If we are to do this in a way which is minimum impact to the economy, it has to be done where we have long-term money.
What the sentiment is there when you deal with international investors, international market participants, especially with Sri Lanka reaching some consensus in terms of domestic debt restructuring?
The outlook from investors is actually very positive at the moment. Of course, there is more to be done and there is more that we need to do in terms of our overall long-term growth trajectory. First of all, we have to get over the international debt restructuring first and then move on into some of the longer-term measures that we need to take in order to set us on the path for a 5% growth. If these measures continue, then I think investors will come back into Sri Lanka reasonably fast.
What implications on the banking sector going forward when we've chosen the path that brings about the least number of implications upon the system?
The banking sector was the one that could have got seriously impacted if there was a domestic restructuring through the bonds, sovereign bonds of the country. Now this has been completely excluded. But the fear was if the domestic restructuring went through to the government of Sri Lanka bonds, then the banks would have had to provide additional money, because if there is a haircut or some kind of extension or coupon rate cut, that is the interest rate, then there will be some kind of day one hit, which will be so high, it will impact the banks bank's capital adequacy ratio. So you have to recapitalize and ask for shareholders to put additional money. These could put the banks at jeopardy. When the banks, people get kind of jittery or concerned about banks, they line up to withdraw money. And that itself could make the banks fail.
Just last week, a lot of social media campaigns asking people to withdraw their fixed deposits. Now, if we address concerns of a layman here who doesn't understand what a haircut is, who doesn't understand what this conversion means, how would you explain to them whether their fixed deposits will be harmed or not?
Very clearly, there will be no impact whatsoever to the depositors because the banking system has been spared in the domestic debt restructuring. We have 3 targets to achieve. One is we have 128% of GDP as our debt, which has to be brought down by 2027 to 2032 period to 95% of our GDP. The second target is we have to achieve the gross financing needs. So that has to be brought down from 34.6% of GDP to 13% of our GDP. And the next is foreign debt financing, which has to be brought down from 9.4% of GDP to 4.5% of GDP. Now, if we are to achieve this, we have to do not only external debt financing, we have to do domestic debt restructuring.
What the sentiment is among investors overseas.
The banking system is what you really need in order to get growth back on track. So I think foreign investors would have appreciated the fact that the banks were not affected by this, because if the banks start lending, have the ability to start lending, now with interest rates having come down substantially in the last month or so, especially in the last week, the economy can get a kickstart. And for the economy to get a kickstart, you need the banks to aggressively go out and lend.
What's really happening here to the Employees Provident Fund with the debt treatment plan?
EPF has been paying about an average 9%.
9% on average to
the members.
Right.
As long as members are able to get around 9%, I'm not disputing the fact that our inflation has been, last announcement is 12%, previously it has been 22%.
So the 9% is assured, guaranteed now.
That's right. So at least 9% is what they are expecting from these bonds. We are talking of, under the restructuring, 12% return up to 2025. That is 22, 23, 24, 25. Okay. Thereafter, until maturity, 9%. So all these assumptions, one can take market interest will be 20%, one can take market interest rates will be 8%.
So are you saying there's no unfair treatment here if you consider the exponential interest rate increases that we've seen?
Yeah, it all depends on what the market rates will be. It will be unfair if the market rates are around 20% in the future, after 2025.
Right.
If it is under, say 8%, then it will not be unfair at all. You are getting even a better rate. Because see, what you have to compare is what is the market rates and liquidity. Now that's where another issue is, if the EPF money had a haircut, where you have a liquidity issue. Now there's not such an impact because EPF gets money on a monthly basis from new members as well as those who contribute on a monthly basis.
In news at Parliament today, the second reading of the Anti-Corruption Bill was approved unanimously in Parliament. The third reading of the bill is expected to take place on the 19th of July following the approval of amendments at the committee stage.
අපි ඉදිරිපත් කරපු සංශෝධන වලින් 75ක් පිළිඅරන් තිබෙනවා. හැබැයි ප්‍රතික්ෂේප කරලා තිබෙන 125 බොහොම බරපතල දේවල්. අතීතයට බලපාන ලෙස මේ නීතිය ක්‍රියාත්මක කළ යුතුයි. රජය ඒ සංශෝධනය ප්‍රතික්ෂේප කරලා තිබෙනවා. සොරකම් කරන ලද වත්කම් යලි පවරා ගැනීම එම සංශෝධනය රජය ප්‍රතික්ෂේප කරලා තිබෙනවා. ඉතින් ඇත්තටම ජනාධිපතිවරයා කියනවා ජාතික අවශ්‍යතාවය වෙනුවෙන් එකතු වෙන්න කියලා. ඉතින් මම අහන්න කැමති එකතු වෙන්න කියන්නේ හොරු අල්ලන්නද හොරු බේරන්නද?
කුමන හෝ වත්කමක් උපයාගෙන තිබෙනවා නම් මේ පනත යටතේ දක්වන අර්ථ නිරූපණයකට ගැනෙන වරදක් යටතේ වය කරගන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ සම්පූර්ණ බලය මේ කොමිෂන් සභාවට ලබා දීලා තියෙනවා. ඒකට ඒ සඳහා අධිකරණ බලය ලබා දීලා තියෙනවා.
නීතියෙන් පමණක් මේක කළ හැකි කියලා විශ්වාස කරනවා නම් ඒ මරි මෝඩ කතාවට අපි අහු වෙන්නේ නැහැ. මොකද ඇත්තට තරම් නීති තිබෙනවනේ. මෙතන තියෙන දේශපාලන සංස්කෘතියේ ප්‍රශ්නයක්. දූෂිතේ කවදාවත් දූෂිතයට දඬුවම් දෙන්නේ නැහැ.
මේ වෙන විට පිටු 28ක සංශෝධන අපිට කරන්න තියෙනවා පළවෙනි යෝජනාව සම්බන්ධයෙන්. දෙවෙනි යෝජනාව සම්බන්ධයෙන්ුත් අපිට සංශෝධන ගණනාවක් තිබෙනවා. ඊළඟ සැසියේ දෙවැනි දිනය එනම් 19 වෙනි දින බදාදා අපි මේ සංශෝධන සියල්ලම ඇතුළත් කළා මේ පනත තවත් සාධනීය මට්ටමට ගෙනල්ලා එදාට යෝජනා සම්මත කරන්න මේක මේ හිතාමතා කල් දැමීමක් හෝ වෙනත් කාරණයක් නිසා නෙවෙයි
අපි විරුද්ධයි මේක අද සංශෝධනය කරන්නම ඕන.
දැන් මෙතන අධිකරණ ඇමතිතුමා ඉන්නවා වාඩි වෙලා. මම දන්නවා අධිකරණ ඇමතිතුමාට ඕනේ අද මේ පනත සම්මත කරගන්න. එහෙනම් මොකද්ද මෙතන තියෙන ප්‍රශ්නේ? මේක මහා අභිරහසක්. බොරුවට සුසිල් ප්‍රේමජයන්ත ඇමතිතුමාලා මේවා ගන්න එපා මේ කොන්ත්‍රාත්.
මගේ පැත්තේ මම දන්නේ මේක කල් දාන්න මොකද්ද තියෙන හේතුව කියලා. එච්චර මට කියන්න තියෙනවා.
සභාවේ එකඟතාවය අඩු කරන්න වෙනවා.
නෑ සභාව එකඟ නෑ.
පළවෙනි යෝජනාව අද දින සම්මත කළා සංශෝධන සඳහා අපි 19 වෙනි දිනට කල් තියෙනවා. අංක 2 යෝජනාවටත් ඒ තීන්දුවම අපි ගන්නවා.
In other news, the Minister of Power and Energy, Kanchana Vijayasekara, said that the new Electricity Act will be presented to the Cabinet for approval. The minister tweeted that the final draft of the new Electricity Act has been handed over to the Legal Draftsman's Office for clearance and is due to be submitted to the Cabinet for approval. As such, the draft will be presented before the Cabinet of Ministers upon receiving certification from the Attorney General's Office. The minister further said that the power sector, Reform Secretariat, which is yet to be established, will develop and implement the transition plan together with financial and technical assistance from the relevant development agencies. Several heads of missions in Colombo and 9 heads of missions based in New Delhi recently embarked on a train journey to the hill country of Sri Lanka. The familiarization tour was part of Sri Lanka's commemoration of 75 years of independence and 75 years of diplomacy. During the journey, foreign envoys also called on President Ranil Wickremesinghe and First Lady Maitri Wickremesinghe at the official residence of the President in Norelia. The Presidential Secretariat, in collaboration with the Sri Lanka Tourism Promotions Bureau and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, organised the Ella Odyssey, a familiarization tour for foreign heads of missions in Colombo. 9 heads of missions based in New Delhi who presented credentials to President Ranil Wickremesinghe also took part in the tour. The journey to the mesmerizing hill country of Norelia and Alla took place from the 1st to the 3rd of July. The diplomatic envoys undertook the journey on board the Viceroy Special, a special vintage train reminiscent of Sri Lanka's colonial past. Along the way, those on board were able to witness the St. Clair's Falls, Knuckles Range, Patipola, the 9-arch bridge in Alla, the Demodara Loop, and a railway signalling routine from a bygone era. The heads of missions also had the opportunity to call on President Wickremesinghe and First Lady Maitri Wickremesinghe at the official residence of the President in Norelia. The excursion to the hill country commemorates 75 years of constructive partnership with the international community and also highlights Sri Lanka's return to stability. The heads of missions from several countries, including the US, France, Japan, and EU, participated in the journey. Foreign Minister Ali Sabri reveals the establishment of a special investment court for FDI hearings. More news after this short commercial break. Stay tuned.
ගොඩමඩ පෙරලි කරන බලපුළුවන් කාරයා මහින්ද්‍රා යුවෝ ටීමෝ වෙතින්. වැඩම ගොඩයි ගොඩම තමයි ස්වරාජ් ට්‍රැක්ටර් ටීමෝ වෙතින්. අපේ ගෙදරත් ආපිකෝ මෙට්‍රස් තමයි. මාදිලි රසකින් යුත් මෙට්ටලුවේ ප්‍රමුඛයා. ආපිකෝ මෙට්‍රස් සැපනින්දට සැප මෙට්ට.
Welcome back. Foreign Minister Ali Sabri said that a special court to deal with investment-related issues will be established through the Commercial Law Committee to resolve disputes concerning foreign investors. This will be a substantial step towards attracting more foreign direct investments into the country. Addressing the Parliament yesterday, Minister Sabri said that with the country focusing on a more export-based economy, it is vital to attract more FDIs for investments in industries.
පේනවා දැන් අවුරුදු 25කට විතර ඉස්සෙල්ලා වාණිජ මහාධිකරණයක් අපි හැදුවා. ඒකෙන් බලාපොරොත්තු වුණේ වාණිජ නඩු ඉතා ඉක්මනින් අහන්නට. නමුත් අද වාණිජ මහාධිකරණයේ සාපේක්ෂව ඉතා හොඳින් වැඩ වෙනවා. නමුත් එතන දැන් නඩු පිරීලා. හැබැයි එතනින් ඉන්ටරිම් ඕඩර් එකක් හරි ෆයිනල් ජජ්මන්ට් එකක් හරි දුන්නා නම් සුප්‍රීම කෝට් එකේ නඩු අහන්න අවුරුදු 6-7ක් යනවා. දැන් අපි යෝජනා කරලා තිබුණා මම හිතනවා මේක අවසාන අධීරයේ තියෙනවා. අපි පත් කරපු කමර්ෂල් ලෝ කමිටු එක හරහා විශේෂ ඉන්වෙස්ට්මන්ට් කෝට් එකක් හදන්න. ඒ කියන්නේ ඒ කාලේ අපි යෝජනා කරේ මිලියන 100කට වඩා වැඩි ඉන්වෙස්ට්මන්ට් එනවා. අද වෙනකොට ඒක මිලියන 200කටවත් වෙන්නට ඕන. මොකද මේක කෙලින්ම බලපානවා. පිටරටවල් වලට ගිහිල්ලා අපි කතා කරනකොට විදේශ ආයෝජකයෝ ඇවිල්ලා අපෙන් අහන ප්‍රශ්න දෙකක් තියෙනවා නඩුව අහන්න ඉස්සෙල්ලා කොච්චර කාලයක් මේකට ගත වෙයිද කියලා. එතකොට අපි කියනවා අපි දන්නේ නැහැ. අවුරුද්දක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්, දෙකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්, 5ක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්, 10ක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඊළඟ ප්‍රශ්නේ අහනවා මේකට කීයක් වියදම් වේද කියලා. පළවෙනි ප්‍රශ්නේට උත්තරයක් නැති හින්දා දෙවෙනි ප්‍රශ්නේටත් උත්තරයක් නැහැ. එතකොට වුන් නඩුව දාන්නේ නැහැ. ආලය ආපසු යනවා. මේක ඊටාත්ම ජාතික ප්‍රශ්නයක්. අපි රටක් වදියට ඉදිරියට යන්නට නම් ඒක අපි අපනයනය මත පාදක වෙච්ච ආර්ථිකයක් ගොඩනගා ගන්නට ඕන. ඒ ආර්ථිකය ගොඩනගා ගන්නට නම් අපිට අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම සිද්ධ වෙනවා විදේශ ආයෝජකයන් ගෙන්න ගන්න.
In other news, Laughs Gas plc announced a price reduction effective from midnight today. As such, the price of a 12.5 kilogram cylinder of LP gas will be reduced by 300 rupees, bringing the new price to 3,690 rupees. The price of a 5 kilogram cylinder of LP gas will be reduced by 120 rupees, bringing the new price to 1,476 rupees a cylinder. According to the Laughs Gas Company, the price reduction was made in a bid to directly provide the benefit of the recent price drop in the global market to its consumers. The price reduction of Laughs Gas Company comes following the significant price revision announced by Litrogas previously this week. According to the Minister of Trade, Commerce and Food Security, the maximum retail price of locally manufactured cement will be reduced from midnight tonight. Addressing a press conference in Colombo today, Minister Nalin Fernando went on to say that the maximum retail price of locally manufactured cement has been 2,600 rupees. With the new revision, the price of a 50 kilogram cement bag will be reduced to 2,300 rupees per bag with effect from tonight. The minister added that all local cement manufacturers mutually agreed upon the price reduction. The Colombo bourse closed higher today after Sri Lanka cut its key interest rates for the second straight month. The Colombo Stock Exchange All-Share Price Index closed at 0.18% higher to end the day at 10,194.47 points, gaining for a straight session. Sri Lanka Telecom and LOLC Holdings were the top gainers on the index, rising 5.95% and 2.1% respectively. The trading volume on the index fell to 120.1 million shares from 172.8 million shares in the previous session. Meanwhile, the S&P SL20 was down by minus 0.36% to close at 3,002.53 points. Market turnover fell to 3.29 billion rupees from 4.95 billion rupees in the previous session. The materials sector was the top contributor to market turnover, while the capital goods sector was the second highest contributor. Foreign investors were net buyers, purchasing stocks worth 153.9 million rupees, while domestic investors were net sellers, offloading 3.18 billion rupees worth of shares. Now let's have a look at how the rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. That's all the news I have for you this evening. Do join us again tomorrow at the same time for a roundup of the day's proceedings right here on AdaDerana. For now, this is Jonathan Benedict for First at 9, wishing you a good night and a blessed Friday tomorrow.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.